A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today, so cheers. Today I'm looking at a book that I actually read a long time ago in high school, and when I first read this book I really didn't enjoy it, even though the author is one of my favorite horror authors of all time. That is Richard Laymon's Resurrection Dreams, which was released in 1988. Now, before I get into the review and all of that stuff, I just want to kind of lament a little bit. This is a little bit of a rant, that it's books like this that are going to be losing popularity with modern readers and up-and-coming readers of horror fiction. The reason being, all the problems in this book could have been settled if someone just had a fucking cell phone, but it was 1988. And I think, not meaning to disparage modern readers and their train of thought, but I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this and not really understanding the context of the age that the book is set in. And I think that's a big problem with literature today. And one that I hope in some ways will be addressed, but I kind of highly doubt that is going to happen. But, you know, that doesn't matter. Now, let's get into this. Richard Laymon, of course, not the greatest writer out there. His prose is very simplistic. If you're looking for kind of high-end horror, you're not going to find it with Richard Laymon. What you are going to find is violence and gore and gratuitous sex and poorly written characters, but great stories. You know, I say poorly written characters, but I'm not disparaging the book in any way, shape or form. This would be my third time reading this. Thoroughly enjoyed the story. And that's what you're there for when you're reading a book like this, is you really want the story. So this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. If you don't want the book spoiled, by all means, go and watch another video or whatever floats your boat. You know, go get a drink. Go get a drink, wait for this video to end, and then watch whatever next one I put up. But if you want to find out all about Resurrection Dreams by Richard Laymon, why I loved it, why I hated it, then stay tuned for the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. 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 People.
Okay. Resurrection Dreams. Now, I can get into a whole discussion on whether or not male writers can effectively write female characters and vice versa, but I'm not going to get into that. All you need to know is the characters in this book are incredibly one-dimensional, and that, while it doesn't serve the prose at all, it kind of helps the story because you can just get right into it and really not give a shit about what happens to anybody in this book. And I say that not in a malicious way. I say that in a way that sometimes when you're reading a horror novel, you just want the horror. You just want that feeling of what the fuck is going to happen to these characters. Not, do I care if it happens to the characters? That's a whole other kind of story, but you just want to know. Now, as I said, in high school, I really did not like Resurrection Dreams. And I think it's because this was one of the first Richard Laymon novels I had read, and the other ones I had read were just simply better. That is not to say that the story is bad. It was for me back then, but now that I've read this with the knowledge that I have of not only Richard Laymon as a writer, but other fiction. For example, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This book tells one hell of a fucking roller coaster ride of a story. But A lot of Richard Laymon's novels I would love to see turned into TV series or screenplays. I don't think this one would work very well as either of those things. I think this one should just be this one-off standalone novel. Now, the book starts with these two guys, teenagers, kind of out on the town, and they see there's a fire near an old bridge, and they go over there, and it's one of their classmates. Their car has crashed, and the classmate is dead. He's in the car naked, and a body has been flung out of the car and decapitated. This guy's girlfriend, who they were apparently like doing sexual deeds as he was barreling along this road in this town, and they crashed into a bridge, and both of them subsequently died. So that's how the book opens. We then move to the main character, Vicky. She is in high school. It's her final year of high school. She has aspirations to become a doctor. And the next few chapters revolve around her in high school and this guy called Melvin Dobbs. Now, Melvin is your typical nerd in these books, always getting picked on by people and whatnot. And Vicky, while she's not the most popular or the most pretty, is nice to him. And kind of he forms this kind of attraction to her. Then we move to the science fair, where Vicky and her friend Alice, who is called Ace through the book, is kind of a nickname, have set up their science fair projects. For some reason in this school, every student who wants to pass science class has to participate in the science fair. No idea what that's about. Never had them when I was in high school, so it's just kind of a country thing, I guess. This is set in the US. And they set up their science fair project, and they see Melvin, who has his science fair project set up in the center of this community hall, but it's all covered up. And when they ask him what it is, he says, "I don't want to tell anyone. It's a big surprise. You'll find out." When it comes time to unveil Melvin's science fair project, he pulls off the sheet to reveal the decapitated corpse of the girl from the car accident, with her head kind of taped on her neck, very much like the bird in Dumb and Dumber. And Melvin has attached jumper cables to her fingers and kind of tries to bring her back to life through electricity. That's his science fair project. He's subsequently hauled off to the nut house. Now, my remembrance of this scene was he had the jumper cables hooked up to her nipples. So I was a bit confused when I read this again last week. But that scene actually is a dream sequence that happens a little bit later in the book. So I wasn't dreaming it. That actually does happen somewhere in the book. We now kind of jump ahead into the future by about 4 or 5 years, maybe a bit later. Vicky is coming back to her hometown to work in the clinic with Dr. Charlie Gaines. Now, Charlie Gaines loaned her money for her med school tuition, and the loan was basically, once you finish your residency, you come back and you work in the clinic with me, paying off that kind of debt, which Vicky was very happy about. It was her dream to always come back to the town, I think it was called Ellsworth, to work for Dr. Gaines. As she drives into town, she realizes her truck needs gas, and the only gas station is run by Melvin, who a year ago was released from the mental institution. Her friend Ace, who still lives in town, lets her know that that Melvin's back. She doesn't want to stop for gas. Ultimately, she does, and she has this awkward back and forth with Melvin, who is just acting kind of weird around her and making jokes about the science fair years earlier and what happened with that. She gets back into town, moves into an apartment, and every morning, the guy who owns the apartment, who happens to be the old chief of police, this guy named Pollock, kind of accosts her and is very lecherous to her, and it makes her really kind of feel uncomfortable. Melvin, we find out, has been attacking and kidnapping women and trying to bring them back to life through different methods and subsequent means. There's a lot of missing persons going around in this small town, usually people that are just passing through. Melvin kidnaps a nurse called Patricia. Patricia is choked to death with cellophane, and Melvin uses this ritual. It's the first time he's ever done it, where he kind of cuts this Egyptian symbol in her stomach and fills it with this green goo stuff that he gets from some shaman witch doctor shop or something. And it works, and Patricia comes back to life, much to Melvin's surprise. It's a very simple procedure, so he didn't think it would work. There's some chanting and shit going on. And Patricia becomes kind of like his slave. She's in love with him, and she does everything for him, including, you know, kind of the deed. Melvin has to go to the clinic because Patricia, as they were struggling, managed to bite his hand before he killed her. So he goes there, and Vicky treats him, and he becomes kind of enamored with her, and he tries to give her a car and all this kind of stuff. And while this is happening, Vicky has moved in with her friend Ace because the chief of police is just a lecherous, creepy weirdo. Ace tells Vicky, listen, let's go for drinks with Melvin. You tell him, you know, this isn't on, we're just friends, and that should be the end of that. So they do. They go to this bar. Melvin goes there. Melvin's a bit apprehensive, but he goes there anyway, and it's all very nice, and they sit down and have a talk and whatnot, and Ace goes off and kind of chats up a guy while Melvin and Vicky are left at the table. And then Pollock, the former chief of police, comes over and starts harassing them. Later on, Pollock is at home, and there's a knock at the door, and it's Patricia. And Patricia is invited in, and she makes an excuse to get into the house, goes in there, and while she's seducing Pollock, she ends up killing him and leaving. So with Pollock's death, Vicky is suspicious because Pollock had kind of said some stuff at the bar, and Melvin had made his wishes known that he wanted Pollock killed for what he said to Vicky. But the evidence all shows that it was this missing nurse, Patricia, that killed Pollock, but Vicky is not having any of this. Melvin concocts this scheme whereby Charlie gives the clinic to Vicky and relieves all of her debt. We find out that he has in fact killed Charlie Gaines and has gotten this lawyer called Jack to oversee the paperwork. Vicky and Jack have met previously when she was jogging. It's a very inconsequential scene. But they end up going on a date whereby Jack says something and Vicky just flips her shit and says, fuck off, you don't know me, you don't know what you're talking about. It's a very awkwardly written part of the book, and it really doesn't make all that much sense. We find out that Patricia is very jealous of Charlie because she wants all of Melvin's attention. Vicky and Jack kind of make up, and they go on a date, and Melvin is watching them, and they go back to Jack's house and they have sex. While just before this has happened, however, Vicky and Ace have called the police and voiced their suspicions about Melvin and the death of Pollock. But the cop that comes to talk to them doesn't really buy any of it, but says, I'll pass on the information to the new police chief, this guy called Chief Raines. Chief Raines doesn't believe any of this shit. Melvin, in a fit of rage, seeing Jack and Vicky together, goes back to Ace's house. He knows that Vicky and Ace are living together. Ace is sleeping with the cop that came to get their statement. He kills the cop, and he basically beats Ace almost to death. He thinks she's dead, but she's not. Vicky leaves Jack's house, goes back home, leaves a note for Jack saying she's in love with him, even though they've only known each other for 3 weeks and they've been on 2 dates, but whatever. Goes back to Ace's house, finds all the blood and Ace hiding because she wasn't dead and she managed to get away from Melvin. Melvin freaks out and just fucking leaves. And she manages to get Ace to the hospital, but not after finding Melvin's shoes with the grease stains from the service station that he works at, or owns, I should say. Ace has been scalped and her jaw is broken and just these horrific, horrific injuries. She gets Ace to the hospital. Melvin disappears. The doctors say, you know, you need to go. We've called the police. The police come and kind of question her, but they're the police from a different county, so they have no jurisdiction. But they call Rains and they say, you've got to go and check out this Melvin guy. The 2 cops are really, really good guys in this. Not the Ellsworth cops, but I think it's the Playville cops or something. Anyway, they believe Vicky, and they want this guy kind of taken down. We find out that Vicky doesn't want to go home, so she goes back to Jack's place. Jack is there, and Jack says, you know, come on in. Vicky asks, can I have a shower? And Jack is like, yeah. And she's like, maybe you'll join me. And they do this flirty thing, but then Jack's acting really weird. And ultimately, he busts into the bathroom and ends up raping Vicky. And Vicky sees that he's got this kind of symbol cut in his stomach, the same one as Patricia. This is where I started to kind of lose it with the story, because it seems like between Vicky taking Ace to the hospital, Melvin has gone to Jack's house, killed him, resurrected him, then taken him back to his house so that he can wait for Vicky. It just all happens in like literally one night. All of this kind of shit is going down. Vicky previously had gotten Melvin to admit to killing Pollock, but he says that he hypnotized Patricia. Again, it's a weird scene, doesn't fit. And as she has no tape recorder or anything, there's really no point to it, just to kind of get the suspicions kind of rising. Jack takes Vicky back to Melvin's house, but Vicky manages to escape the car. And as Jack is chasing her, he gets hit by a car, which is driven by one of the guys from the first chapter who found the 2 bodies of the teenagers, so that ties that all back in for some weird fucking reason. Jack is all kind of messed up, but he ends up killing that guy. The guy's name is Wes. Vicky gets taken to Melvin's house. Melvin sees that something is wrong, tells Jack to take Melvin down to the basement, where Patricia, at this point, has killed the 2 cops from Ellsworth, Chief Rains and his second in command, and resurrected them. Melvin goes to see this car accident that Jack caused, realizes he shouldn't have left Patricia alone with Vicky because Patricia's jealous, races down there. Jack is kind of stopping him from getting in. They have a fight. Patricia, in the meantime, is torturing Vicky and is basically going to let the cops kill her. Melvin manages to get downstairs, tries to stop it. They're about to kill Vicky, and Patricia ends up killing Melvin. Vicky then wakes up. She is knocked unconscious. She wakes up. She's tied to the basement stairs. And Patricia, the 2 cops, and Melvin are gone. And we find out later on that Patricia had resurrected Melvin, and now Melvin is her slave. Big twist there. A few years later, like 6 months later or something like that, Ace is fully recovered. She's still having nightmares. Vicky is kind of out jogging, doing her thing, and this is where it gets so unbelievably fucking stupid. So all through this book, Vicky has been talking about this guy. I think his name is Patrick. Patrick was her first love when she was just a young teenage girl. But he had to move away with his family. I think his dad was in the military or something. At the end of this book, Patrick shows up because he heard that she was in trouble. Are you kidding me? That is the weakest ending I have ever fucking read. There's a whole kind of side plot with Charlie being... Melvin tries to kill Charlie because he doesn't want him around anymore, and then Vicky and Jack find him, and it just makes no fucking sense. Doesn't really matter. But then Patrick comes, and they they meet on the raft in the middle of a lake that they were on the last time they saw each other, or some shit like that. It was just a very bad ending to this book. And so Vicky and Patrick have their happy ending, and then we find out that Melvin and Patricia are on a crime spree, and they're going around just kind of robbing convenience stores and shit like that. And that's the end of the book. Now, did I enjoy it? Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. It was a fun read. It was an easy read. The gory bits were great. The sex scenes were stupidly gratuitous. Would I say this is one of Richard Laymon's better books? Definitely not. The opening sequence with the science fair was a really cool idea, but then the ease at which this resurrection ritual happens, like Melvin seems to be resurrecting someone every 2 fucking days. And even in one night, 4 people get fucking resurrected. It's ridiculous. Like, it's just silly. It's just silly. But that's the tone, that's the fun of this book. It's just a fun, stupid, silly read. So I'll recommend it to you as a fan of Richard Laymon. I will not recommend it to you as a fan of horror. There are better horror books out there, and there are better horror books that deal with this kind of theme of resurrection and loss of control and whatnot. Overall, though, yeah, I mean, it's a Richard Laymon novel. There's not much more I can say about it, so take it as you want. The cover, however, is spectacular. I love that cover. It's just so freaking sinister. And a few of my students actually, when I had this in class, before class, I'd be reading a little bit, and a few of my students kind of commented on the cover. These editions of Richard Laymon, their covers are far superior than kind of later Richard Laymon covers. For example, this is One Rainy Night. This is a later edition. I prefer the black over this kind of larger thing. Although this is a fantastic book too, which I'll be reading and reviewing in the future. So there you have it, Richard Laymon, Resurrection Dreams. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that I said in this video, please. Let's get a dialogue started on how literature is basically devolving because, you know, teenagers and kids coming up aren't going to be reading the older stuff because to them it makes no sense. There are plot points there that can easily be solved with a laptop or a cell phone or something like that. And let me know what you think. I'd be very interested to hear some of your thoughts and maybe get an open discussion going, maybe for a later video. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Make sure you check out other videos that I'll be releasing in the future. Of course, follow us on all kinds of social media platforms, and I'll be leaving a link down below to Ian Van Gammet's latest YouTube channel where he basically paints nasty things. So there you have it. But please, everyone, do yourself a favor, stay safe, have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, resurrect the fucking corpse, people.